I'm staring at my computer screen right now, still processing what happened 4 days ago. My hands are shaking slightly as I type this, not from fear, but from the adrenaline that comes with vindication. You know that feeling when someone dismisses you, counts you out, only to realize they made the biggest mistake of their career? Let me take you back to Monday morning at Jade Enterprises. My name is Riana John, and I've been working as a senior analyst for 3 years. I thought I knew my place in the company hierarchy until Gregory Walsh, our VP of Strategic Development, called me into his office that morning. His office reeked of expensive cologne and ambition. Awards lined the walls: Regional Sales Leader 2019, Innovation in Client Relations 2021, all accolades that meant nothing in the face of what was about to unfold. The Persian rug beneath my feet probably cost more than my monthly salary, and I couldn't help but notice how he positioned himself behind that massive mahogany desk like a king holding court. "Riana, about the quarterly strategy retreat this Thursday," he began, his tone already telling me everything I needed to know. "We've decided to keep it small this year. Only high potential staff members." The way he emphasized high potential felt like a slap across my face. I could see the retreat invitation list sitting on his desk, face down, but the corner was visible enough to catch glimpses of names. Michael Crawford from Marketing. Patricia Williams from Operations. Daniel Foster from Client Relations. All good people, but none of them had the analytical depth I'd been demonstrating for years. I nodded calmly, my expression neutral. "I understand." "Great. I knew you'd be reasonable about this." His smile widened, revealing teeth too white to be natural. "We need our rising stars to focus on the big picture without distractions." Distractions. That's what 3 years of exceeding targets, innovative solutions, and client retention made me. A distraction. What Gregory didn't know was that I'd already anticipated this moment. For months, I'd watched him play favorites, elevating people who shared his golf club membership or attended the same university alumni events. I'd seen him dismiss brilliant ideas simply because they came from the wrong people. The writing had been on the wall, but I'd hoped, foolishly, that merit would eventually speak louder than politics. I walked back to my cubicle with measured steps, my heels clicking against the polished floor. My colleagues glanced up as I passed, some offering sympathetic looks. The office gossip mill works fast, and everyone already knew who made the cut and who didn't. Sharon Martinez, my cubicle neighbor, leaned over the partition. "I can't believe they didn't include you," she whispered, genuine outrage in her voice. "Your market analysis last quarter saved us 3 major accounts." "It's fine," I replied, settling into my chair. But it wasn't fine, and we both knew it. The rest of Monday dragged by like molasses. I watched the chosen few huddle in conference rooms, presumably preparing for their exclusive strategic session. Their voices carried across the open office space, filled with self-importance and anticipation. Meanwhile, I handled my regular workload: client reports, market analysis, budget projections, the unglamorous tasks that actually kept the company running. But here's what Gregory didn't know about me: exclusion has always been my greatest motivator. That evening, I sat in my 1-bedroom apartment in Queens, far from the Manhattan penthouses where I imagined my high-potential colleagues resided. My modest space was cluttered with industry publications, market research printouts, and 3 monitors displaying real-time data feeds. The city lights twinkled through my window as I began typing, fueled by a combination of righteous anger and crystal-clear purpose. I'd been observing patterns in our client data that others missed. While everyone focused on quarterly numbers, I saw the underlying shifts happening in our market. Our biggest competitor, Meridian Holdings, had been making moves that seemed random to most analysts. They'd acquired 2 small tech startups, hired away 3 key executives from different industries, and increased their R&D spending by 40% over the past 18 months. To most observers, these looked like scattered investments. But I recognized the strategy. They were positioning themselves for a technological disruption that would fundamentally reshape our industry within 18 months. The signs were everywhere if you knew how to read them. I pulled up my personal analysis files, research I'd been conducting on my own time, using publicly available information and industry connections I'd cultivated over the years. The picture that emerged was both terrifying and exhilarating. Artificial intelligence and machine learning weren't just coming to our financial services sector, they were about to revolutionize client relationship management in ways that would make traditional approaches obsolete. My fingers flew across the keyboard as I outlined a comprehensive response strategy. I called it Project Catalyst, a framework for not just surviving the coming disruption, but positioning Jade Enterprises as the industry leader through it. The proposal included detailed implementation timelines, budget projections, partnership opportunities, and risk mitigation strategies. I worked until 3 a.m., surviving on coffee and determination. By the time I finally fell asleep on my couch, surrounded by scattered papers and empty takeout containers, I had created something extraordinary. A 50-page strategic framework that could transform our entire business model. The next morning, Tuesday, I arrived at the office an hour early. The building was quiet except for the overnight cleaning crew finishing their rounds. I used the time to refine my proposal, adding charts, graphs, and supporting documentation that would make my argument irrefutable. Around 8 a.m., as my colleagues began filtering in with their morning coffee and mundane conversations about weekend plans, I did something I'd never done before. I bypassed Gregory entirely and sent my proposal directly to Catherine Sterling, our CEO. The subject line read, Urgent, Competitive Intelligence and Strategic Response Framework. My heart hammered against my ribs as I hit send. This was either career suicide or the smartest move I'd ever made. Catherine Sterling was legendary in our industry. She'd built Jade Enterprises from a regional player into a national powerhouse over 15 years. Her reputation for recognizing talent was matched only by her ruthlessness in eliminating deadweight. I'd only spoken to her twice in 3 years, both times brief encounters in elevators or hallways. The email included my full analysis, complete with executive summary, detailed findings, and implementation roadmap. I'd attached supporting documents, industry reports, and competitive analysis data that I'd compiled over months of meticulous research. If she actually read it, and that was a big if, she'd understand immediately why this mattered. Tuesday crawled by without a response. I went through the motions of my regular work, but my mind kept wandering to that email sitting in Catherine's inbox. Every notification sound from my computer made my pulse spike, only to deflate when it turned out to be routine correspondence or internal memos. Around lunchtime, I noticed Gregory schmoozing with the retreat attendees in the break room. They were discussing agenda items, debating which restaurants to visit after their sessions, planning their networking opportunities. The casual entitlement in their voices made my stomach churn. This retreat is going to be game-changing, I heard Patricia Williams say as she stirred sugar into her coffee. Gregory mentioned we're going to tackle some really big picture thinking. Big picture thinking. The irony was suffocating. Wednesday brought an entirely different energy to the office. Around 4 p.m., I noticed unusual activity. Senior executives were having hushed conversations in corners, and there seemed to be more closed-door meetings than usual. Catherine's assistant, Helen Rodriguez, Rodriguez was on my forbidden list. Let me correct that. Catherine's assistant, Helen Morrison, was making more trips to the executive elevator than normal. I caught glimpses of executives I rarely saw on our floor. The chief technology officer, whom I'd only seen in company newsletters, walked past my cubicle twice. The head of human resources spent an unusual amount of time in Catherine's office. Something was definitely happening, but I couldn't piece together what it meant. Sharon leaned over again around 5 p.m. Have you noticed all the executive activity today? Something's brewing. I had noticed, but I couldn't connect it to my proposal. Maybe Catherine hadn't even seen my email. Maybe it was buried under hundreds of other messages from people far more important than a senior analyst who'd been excluded from strategy discussions. That evening, I barely slept. I kept replaying every interaction, every detail, wondering if I'd made a catastrophic error in judgment. Bypassing your direct supervisor to contact the CEO was the kind of move that could get you fired immediately, regardless of the content of your message. Thursday arrived, retreat day. I watched my high-potential colleagues leave the office early, their voices filled with excitement about the exclusive strategic session. They'd dressed up for the occasion, carrying leather portfolios and wearing expressions of self-importance that made me want to scream. Gregory walked past my desk without acknowledgement, his designer briefcase in hand and his usual swagger amplified for the occasion. He wore his most expensive suit, the charcoal gray Armani that he'd mentioned cost more than some people's cars. His Italian leather shoes clicked confidently across the floor as he headed toward the elevator bank. Have a productive day, Riana, he said without looking back, his tone dripping with condescension. I'm sure you'll find plenty to keep busy with while we handle the strategic thinking. I watched the elevator doors close behind him and felt something crystallize in my chest. Not anger, exactly, but a cold determination that surprised me with its intensity. I stayed late that night, working on client reports and trying not to think about what discussions were happening without me. The office felt eerily quiet, just the hum of computers and the distant rumble of city traffic below. The cleaning crew made their rounds, empty pizza boxes from the day shift littered the break room, and I found myself completely alone with my thoughts. Around 9 p.m., I decided to check my email one more time before heading home. Nothing from Catherine, but there was a message from Helen Morrison sent just an hour earlier. Ms. John, please ensure your schedule is clear tomorrow morning. Ms. Sterling may need to speak with you. My hands trembled as I read the message 3 times. May need to speak with you. What did that mean? Was I about to be fired for insubordination? Or had something else entirely happened? Friday morning changed everything. I arrived at my usual time, 7:30 a.m., to find the office buzzing with an energy I hadn't felt in months. People were clustered around the coffee machine, their voices animated and excited. The retreat attendees had returned, but instead of the triumphant glow I'd expected, they looked confused and somewhat deflated. As I approached my desk, I caught fragments of conversation that made my heart stop. Revolutionary approach to market positioning. Whoever came up with this is brilliant. Catherine wants to implement immediately. Completely changed the direction of our strategic planning. Michael Crawford was standing near the water cooler, gesturing enthusiastically as he spoke to Patricia Williams. I've never seen Catherine so excited about a proposal. She kept referring to it as visionary thinking and exactly what we need for the future. Patricia nodded, but her expression was puzzled. I just don't understand where it came from. Gregory seemed as surprised as the rest of us when she presented it. My phone rang, cutting through my eavesdropping. The caller ID showed Catherine Sterling's direct line. Ms. John? This is Helen Morrison, Ms. Sterling's assistant. Ms. Sterling would like to see you in her office. Immediately. The elevator ride to the executive floor felt endless. My palms were damp, and I kept rehearsing what I might say. The executive floor was a different world, marble floors instead of industrial carpet, artwork that probably cost more than my annual salary, and an atmosphere of rarefied authority that made me acutely aware of my off-the-rack business suit. Catherine's office was a corner suite with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the financial district. The morning light streamed in, illuminating her standing behind her desk with my printed proposal in her hands. The document was heavily annotated with her handwriting, covered in notes and highlights that suggested thorough analysis. Riana, sit down. Her voice was calm but carried an undertone I couldn't quite read. I received your email Tuesday evening. I spent Wednesday reviewing it with our external consultants. External consultants. My throat felt dry. I hope I didn't overstep. She held up a hand, stopping me. Our consulting firm, McKenna Strategy Group, has been working with us for 6 months on competitive positioning. When I showed them your analysis, their lead partner said it was the most comprehensive market intelligence he'd seen from an internal source. I tried to process this information, but my mind was reeling. Catherine continued, yesterday, at our strategy retreat, I presented your framework to the senior leadership team without revealing the author. I wanted their unbiased reactions. The room felt like it was spinning slightly. And? They called it the most innovative strategic thinking they'd seen in years. Gregory specifically said it represented exactly the kind of visionary leadership we need for the future. Catherine's expression remained neutral, but I caught a glimmer in her eyes. Michael Crawford suggested we hire whoever wrote it as a consultant. Patricia Williams wondered if we could poach this person from whatever company they currently worked for. I felt a laugh building in my chest, but I suppressed it. Then I told them who wrote it. The silence that followed was deafening. Catherine moved around her desk and sat in the chair across from me, her posture indicating this was about to become a very different kind of conversation. Riana, in 15 years of running this company, I've seen a lot of talented people overlooked because they didn't fit someone's narrow definition of leadership potential. But I've also seen what happens when truly exceptional thinking gets ignored because of office politics and personal biases. Before I could respond, her office door burst open without a knock. Gregory stormed in, his face flushed red, his usually perfect hair disheveled. His expensive suit was wrinkled, suggesting he'd spent a sleepless night. His eyes locked onto mine with a mixture of fury and panic, like a cornered animal. "Why are they quoting your ideas?" he shouted, pointing an accusatory finger at me. How did your proposal end up in the retreat presentation? You weren't even invited. The silence that followed was deafening. Catherine slowly placed my proposal on her desk, her gaze never leaving Gregory's face. The morning light caught the gold lettering on her MBA diploma from Wharton, a reminder of the credentials that had carried her to the top of our industry. Gregory, she said, her voice cutting through the tension like ice, perhaps you'd like to explain to Riana why someone with her strategic capabilities wasn't included in yesterday's discussion? I watched Gregory's Adam's apple bob as he swallowed hard. His confident demeanor crumbled before my eyes, replaced by the desperate scrambling of someone whose professional judgment had just been publicly called into question. We thought, the team size needed to be manageable. He stammered, sweat beading on his forehead despite the office air conditioning. You thought wrong, Catherine's voice carried the weight of finality. More importantly, your ability to identify and develop talent has proven fundamentally flawed. How do you explain excluding our most analytically gifted staff member from strategic planning? Gregory's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Riana is certainly capable, but strategic thinking requires. Requires what, exactly? Catherine's interruption was surgical in its precision. The ability to identify market disruptions 18 months before they occur? The capacity to develop comprehensive response frameworks that our external consultants called exceptional? Or perhaps the vision to see opportunities where others see only challenges? I sat frozen, watching this confrontation unfold with a mixture of vindication and professional satisfaction I'd never experienced before. Catherine, surely we can discuss this privately, Gregory attempted damage control. There's nothing to discuss. Your judgment regarding talent recognition has proven inadequate. She turned to me. Riana, effective immediately, you're promoted to Director of Strategic Innovation. You'll be reporting directly to me, and your first responsibility will be implementing Project Catalyst across our organization. The color drained from Gregory's face. He looked like he'd been physically struck. You can't be serious. She's been here 3 years. There are protocols, hierarchies. Hierarchies that failed to recognize exceptional talent when it was sitting right under their noses, Catherine replied coolly. Protocols that nearly allowed our biggest strategic opportunity to walk out the door because someone decided she wasn't high potential enough for strategic discussions. Gregory left the office without another word, his shoulders slumped in defeat. The door closed behind him with a soft click that somehow sounded like the end of an era. Catherine returned to her desk and picked up a leather portfolio I hadn't noticed before. Your new office is on the 42nd floor. Helen will show you up after we finish here. I want you to present Project Catalyst to our board next Tuesday. Can you be ready? I found my voice, though it came out steadier than I felt. Absolutely. Good. You'll also be working directly with McKenna Strategy Group to refine the implementation timeline. They're impressed with your work and want to explore a long-term consulting relationship. She opened the portfolio, revealing what looked like employment contracts and organizational charts. Your salary is being adjusted to reflect your new role and responsibilities. I think you'll find the compensation appropriate for someone of your capabilities. As I walked back to the elevator, I passed my former colleagues from the retreat. Their expressions ranged from surprise to admiration, and a few offered congratulations. Michael Crawford actually approached me directly. Riana, I owe you an apology. I had no idea you were working on anything like this. Your analysis was brilliant. His tone was genuine, lacking the condescension I'd grown accustomed to from the high-potential crowd. Thank you, Michael. I appreciate that. Patricia Williams joined the conversation. I've been thinking about your framework all morning. The implications for our client services division are enormous. I'd love to discuss implementation strategies when you have time. The irony wasn't lost on me. By excluding me from their strategic discussions, they'd inadvertently created the very breakthrough they were trying to achieve. That afternoon, I moved into my new corner office on the 42nd floor. The view was spectacular. Central Park stretched out to the north, the Hudson River gleamed to the west, but more importantly, I finally had a seat at the table where decisions were made. The office came equipped with everything I'd dreamed of, a conference table for strategic meetings, dual monitors for complex analysis, and most importantly, direct access to the executive floor and decision-making processes. Helen Morrison stopped by to introduce herself properly and explain the administrative support available to directors. Ms. Sterling wanted me to give you this, Helen said, handing me a thick folder. It's background material on our board members, their priorities, and presentation preferences. She thought it might help with Tuesday's presentation. That weekend, I worked around the clock preparing for the board presentation. I refined my analysis, created detailed implementation timelines, and developed comprehensive risk mitigation strategies. By Sunday evening, I had transformed my initial proposal into a boardroom-ready strategic framework that could reshape our entire company. The following Tuesday, I stood before Jade Enterprises' board of directors in their mahogany-paneled conference room. 12 of the most powerful figures in our industry sat around an enormous table, their attention focused entirely on me. Catherine Sterling sat at the head of the table, her expression encouraging but neutral. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice steady and confident, 18 months from now, our industry will face a technological disruption that will fundamentally change how we serve clients. We can either be victims of this change, or we can lead it. The room was silent as I outlined how artificial intelligence and machine learning would transform client relationship management. I presented detailed analysis of our competitors' positioning, market trend data, and implementation strategies that would position Jade Enterprises as the industry leader. When I explained how Meridian Holdings' seemingly random investments were actually a coordinated strategy to dominate the post-disruption landscape, board member Dr. William Ashford leaned forward with interest. "Ms. John, your competitive intelligence is remarkable. How did you identify these patterns when our external consultants missed them?" "Sometimes being excluded from traditional strategic processes forces you to develop alternative analytical approaches," I replied, catching Catherine's slight smile from across the table. "I've been tracking these indicators for over a year, using publicly available data and industry connections to build a comprehensive picture." Board member Margaret Foster, who'd founded 2 successful tech startups before joining our board, nodded approvingly. "Your framework addresses market positioning, technological adaptation, and client retention simultaneously. It's exactly the kind of integrated thinking we need." When I finished, the applause was immediate and genuine. Dr. Ashford was the first to speak. "Catherine, implementing this strategy should be our absolute priority. Ms. John has identified both the threat and the opportunity with remarkable clarity." Margaret Foster agreed. "I move that we approve Project Catalyst for immediate implementation, with full budget authorization for the first phase." The vote was unanimous. 2 weeks later, Gregory accepted a position with a smaller firm across town. I heard through industry contacts that he struggled to adapt to a more collaborative leadership style. His replacement, Patricia Williams, made it clear that talent recognition and strategic thinking would be prioritized over office politics and personal networking. As for me, Project Catalyst is now our company's flagship strategic initiative. We've already secured partnerships with 3 major technology firms that will position us perfectly for the coming disruption. Our stock price has increased by 22% since the board announcement, and industry publications have featured our transformation strategy in multiple articles. But the real victory came 3 months later, when McKenna Strategy Group offered me a partnership track position. Catherine counteroffered with an executive vice president role and equity stake in Jade Enterprises. The choice was mine. I chose to stay. Not because the money was better, though it certainly was, but because I'd helped build something extraordinary here. Project Catalyst wasn't just changing our company, it was transforming how we thought about talent, strategy, and innovation. Here's what I want you to take away from this story: your worth isn't determined by who includes you in their plans. Sometimes, being overlooked is the universe's way of giving you space to exceed their expectations entirely. They thought they knew who belonged at the strategy table. They thought they could identify high potential by looking at office politics and networking skills. What they couldn't see was someone quietly observing, analyzing, and preparing to leap when opportunity presented itself. I'm curious, have you ever been excluded from something that seemed important, only to find it opened a door to something better? Have you ever felt overlooked at work, like your contributions weren't valued by the people making decisions? Because here's the truth, the people who dismiss you today might be asking for your help tomorrow. The key is being ready when that moment comes. Don't let exclusion make you bitter, let it make you better. Your breakthrough might be one bold move away. The question is, are you prepared to take it?